Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Getting Started with AV Ops Center. My name is Vin Keen. I'm part of the communications and training team here at Symetrix HQ in Seattle. We're very excited to have you join us here today. I think for some of you it's very late in the day, for some of you it's very early in the day, so really appreciate your time. We're excited to have you here and to demonstrate how AV Ops Center can improve professional installed AV systems for consultants, integrators, and of course, end users. So what we're going to cover today is really an overview of the AV Ops Center. We'll talk a little bit about how it can benefit your business. Then Benjamin Olswang, our VP of Engineering, will provide us a live tour of AV Ops Center to show us its capabilities, along with step-by-step instructions to get started. Once Ben's taken us through the tour, we'll have some Q&A and cover as many of the questions as we possibly can. But first of all, what is the AV Ops Center? It really is the first remote monitoring and management tool that was specifically created to optimize composer-based DSP audio and control systems. This is a cloud-based system. It receives telemetry from audio components and third-party components, and then provides real-time access to actionable system metrics via a dashboard that you can get to from any modern web browser from anywhere. Additionally, the system can send preset and customized commands to these remote devices to optimize their performance or troubleshoot them. AV Ops Center can remotely monitor and manage anything that has a Composer Series DSP, and it's been designed for easy adoption with minimal risk. There isn't a lot of extensive training or setup and use. We tried to make that piece very easy. That said, familiarity with Composer will be very helpful. Though not a requirement definitely for this demo. We know there's other monitoring platforms available out there, and we've really tried to bring Symetrix expertise and professional installed audio and control and make AV Ops Center a seamless and enjoyable experience for you and the users. To that end, the service is currently in a fully functional public beta release and available free of charge. As Ben will talk about, we're continuing to develop features and functionality, and the reason we're calling it a beta is to make sure you all feel very welcome and engaged with us to tell us how we can improve that service to meet your specific needs. So what can we actually do with it? I'll take you through a very simple example of how AV Ops Center might benefit you. Imagine that our client is a middle school in Bellevue, Washington. Of course, we're located up here in Mount Lake Terrace, but down at the elementary school in Bellevue, they're rehearsing for their annual holiday play, and someone's on the phone telling us, you know what, there's nothing coming out of the PA. Now, that's not a good situation. I look on Google. Google tells me if I jump in my car right now, it's going to take me about a half an hour to get down there. And if I'm lucky on the way back, it's going to take me an hour and a half to get back in Seattle rush hour traffic. So a lot of time invested. But luckily, this installation is on a managed service platform that leverages AV Ops Center. So rather than jumping in my car, I'm going to jump onto my web browser and I'm going to log into AV Ops Center, which will connect me to real-time data about the system down in Bellevue. Now, it turns out in this particular example that it was just a matter of a simple mute, and I'm able to send a command to unmute that system. While the teacher is still on the phone, we can make sure that everything is set and they're off and running. Now, if it hadn't been that simple, maybe there's an actual issue with one of the system components, AV Ops Center would help me analyze system data in real time, as well as look back at some longitudinal data from the history. I can also access logs or open tickets to escalate questions all the way straight up to Symetrix support here at HQ. If I do need to go down there and make a physical change, AV Ops Center can let me know what I need to have with me, who might be the best person to go and address this issue quickly. I can get the right people and the right tools to efficiently resolve the issue. So really a lot of benefits, even in this very simplest of cases. Now, overall, AV Ops Center will improve reliability and system satisfaction. We're designing it to dovetail with existing managed services offerings and to accelerate the introductions of these types of services by integrators. Our goal, of course, is to help everyone along the entire spectrum deliver an enhanced customer experience with efficient cost structures. And again, I can't reiterate enough how much Ben and his team have worked to make this a turnkey solution without expensive capital investments or training. So with no further ado, I'd like to introduce Ben Olswang, our VP of Engineering here at Symetrix, who will take us on the tour. Welcome, Ben, and thank you.
Thanks, Vin. I am Ben Olswang, VP of Engineering here at Symetrix, and I'm incredibly excited to take you through AV Ops Center, show you just how easy it is to get logged in, set up your initial spaces, start to add devices, and start to utilize it to monitor a variety of systems and add some real value to your customers. Before we start with all that, let me give you a quick overview of the devices I'm going to be using for today's demo. As you can see here, I have two DSPs. I have a Radius NX, and it's a 12x8, and I have a Prism 0x0. And then I also have a couple other devices, a Dante microphone from Audio-Technica, a Dante speaker, and a T5 touchscreen controller. So we're going to be adding all of these in a couple of steps into AV Ops Center and start to monitor and control some of them remotely. So let's start by signing up for a new account in AV Ops Center. That's done starting at the Symetrix website under Services, AV Ops Center. Here you can see two options, sign up or log in. So let's choose sign up. And it takes you to a page where you can sign up for a new organization account. Let's use a fictitious email of helpguy@symetrix.co. Agree to the terms of use and privacy policy. So you'll want to use an email at your organization, at your company, obviously. Continue with that, and then enter in your real name, a password. It's auto-filled one for me. And then the name of your organization. So this would be the name of your company. I'll put in Symetrix and hit continue. And you'll see that I get an error because Symetrix is a name that's already taken. There's already an organization name that way. You might see another error that says that the email address suffix is already in use with a organization. So both of those are hints to tell you, stop, you don't need to make a new organization. You need to be added to an existing organization. And you'll want to find the person at your company who has managed and created the initial organization. So I'll show you how to add people shortly. So because I already have an organization, I'm going to go back to the Symetrix website and choose log in. And I'm going to sign in with our account, and this takes you to an empty organization that you'll see that has no devices or spaces to organize those devices created yet. So this is pretty similar to what you would see when you start with a blank organization. So let's take a tour of the software. On the left are a bunch of different views to show you high level of what's going on in your system, of what you're monitoring. The organization overview shows you a list of all your spaces and the information about the selected space. We'll dive into that in more detail. Then you have a bunch of tabs that really only start to get useful once you have devices in there. So we'll circle back to them to talk about incidents, devices, files, warranties, and tickets. And then finally you have settings. I'm going to click on that to show you a few key settings you'll want to explore. First of all is settings, users, and groups. Now this is where you're going to add additional users to your organization. Once the organization has been created, you'll go here, choose add user, and add other users at your company. So this would be IT, support staff, anyone who needs to get in and monitor a system. And they can have different roles. They could be administrators, they could be support engineers, they could have view only or edit and view. So you have a lot of flexibility there. But you want to add them into the system here. You also have the ability to add users from outside your organization, such as key customers that you want to be able to view aspects of the system. Now, another thing you'll want to set right at the beginning is in the notification settings. And that's this email right here. This is the email of the primary email that you want notified when there is a problem with your monitored systems. And we call those either incidents or tickets. And this email will be the default email that's notified. You can add additional emails and change them on a site-by-site basis, but by default, this is the one that's notified. So I'm going to hit save here with helpguy@symetrix.co. Now we can go back to the organization overview. Actually, just let me note that as there are a whole bunch of other settings here, I don't have time to go through each one, but it's worth you clicking through each one and exploring them at your leisure. So here on the organization overview, the second column here is called the space list. And this lists all of the spaces that you want to organize your devices into. So what is a space? A space actually could be a couple things. Generally, a space is used for either grouping devices with it for a customer or a geographical location, or both, because spaces can be nested within one another. So let's make a few spaces to show you how this works. So by default, you just have the top level booth company space. That's the name of my fictitious company, booth company. And you'll also see a space that's called unsorted. This is for any devices that have yet to be manually moved to any other space. And when you add a new device, it'll automatically show up here. So as you can see, I have no devices here because we haven't added any. So back under booth company, I'm going to click on the ellipsis button and choose to add a new space. So this first space I'm going to name after our customer. So usually we recommend using the top level spaces to be customer names. So as Vin said, one of our key customers here is the Bellevue School District. So they are getting a name of a customer. And the Bellevue School has a couple locations. They have their main building. They have a gym, and they have a theater. Now, let's pretend we have another key customer that we want to monitor. So I'm going to go back to the top level and add another top level space for this customer. And this is Gino's Pizza. They're a very popular pizza joint. They have a location on First Street, and they're so popular that they have a location just right next door on 2nd Street. So this is a very common way to organize things. The list can get really long, and you have the ability to search it and filter, hide, and show. And of course, as I said, you can have additional levels of hierarchy here. So for perhaps in the main building, I want to even organize that by floor 1 and floor 2, for example. So really helpful way to organize your devices and spaces. Now, another really important thing to do to help take advantage of the power of AV Op Center is to add locations to each of these spaces so that AV Op Center can display devices and problems on a map. So that's done by selecting a space and choosing this ellipsis button over here. So I'm going to start with the top level space booth company, which is our company, and I'll enter in our location here at Symetrix in Mount Lake Terrace, Washington. So that is the top level location for Symetrix. I'm going to save that. And then you see there's a couple other configurations per space. Incident routing. This allows you to configure where incidents, where problems are routed and how people are notified. So by default, that email that we entered in the settings tab is used here by default, but you could also notify people via Slack, via Google Chat, Teams, and some other services. I'm going to leave that as is. And then finally, you have an access option to add access to individual spaces. So you could invite an external support user into a space. So we'll utilize that for Bellevue School, for example. Let's go there now. Select Bellevue School, Settings, And here, I don't want to inherit the location from the parent space. I want to turn that off and add a specific location for that school. But I'm going to inherit some of these other options. Let's inherit all of the incident routing, but you could turn on just the Bellevue School Slack and notify them that way, for example. And I could invite a user from the Bellevue School District, something like that, and add them as a view-only user into the system. So they'd be able to monitor all of the devices within the Bellevue School, but they wouldn't see anything about Gino's Pizza or any of our other customers because we've just added them to this space. I'm not going to do that so I don't bug the Bellevue School District with an email. And let's go back here. I did forget something, but I remembered it. I need to type Bellevue, Washington again and hit save. Forgot to do that. And finally, let's go to Gino's Pizza and give them a location. And they're in Seattle. Of course, I could give them more detailed addresses here, but I'm just giving a high-level address. Another thing you could change at the top is you can load in an image for each space. I don't have one here for Gino's Pizza, but I could load in a nice pizza slice here or their logo so that each of my locations has a good, clear visual indication of its purpose. So we've really gone quite far into what you do before you start to add devices into AV Ops Center. But we've pretty much taken it to the limit there. We've created some spaces and added locations. So let's switch over to Composer now and start to add devices. So I have Composer 8.5 here, and Composer 8.5 is needed to start to utilize the AV Ops Center functionality. Now we are going to start by going with a really simple system with just a single DSP. I'm going to drag in my Prism. Let's locate that Prism on the network. Now, one thing you should do here is update your hardware. I've already updated mine, but you want to make sure that the hardware is up to date on the latest firmware before you start to enable remote monitoring. I've already done that. So I'm going to go to a new tab under Tools, AV Ops Center Manager. Now, with this open, actually I want to call attention first to this new additional notification area here. Next to the online status that you're familiar with, we have a new AV Ops Center status. So right now, AV Ops Center is disabled. So the process of enabling it are 3 steps. First, we need to add the organization API key. Well, what's that? Well, that's something you get back in AV Ops Center. So I'm going to switch back to AV Ops Center, go to Settings, API keys. And you'll see here a very long string of numbers and letters. And what this is it just uniquely identifies the booth company organization for use in other software applications like Composer. So I'm going to copy that API key and switch back to Composer, where I'm going to click Edit and paste that API key into Composer. I'm going to hit OK. And it says the API key is valid, and I'm confirmed by the display of my organization name, Booth Company. Now, the next thing I have to do here is to associate this new piece of hardware, this Prism 0x0, with my organization. And that's a process that we call claiming. Now, however many devices you have in a site, you can claim all of them once you've entered your API key with just a single click called on this Claim All button. So I'm just going to click that, and it takes a second or two, but almost immediately there you see that Prism 0x0 is now claimed by Booth Company. And so it is associated with my organization, and now no one else can claim that device. Even if they had Composer on the same network, they cannot claim that device without removing it from AV Ops Center. Last step is to click this big bold enable remote monitoring. The reason that's a separate step is you might want to pre-claim all these things but not want to actually start the active monitoring during initial setup until a little bit later you've confirmed everything is working. So that's a final thing that you have to enable. You could do that at a later date as needed. But now that I've enabled it, you see the AV Ops Center status is indicated green and enabled. I'm still offline. And so the last step I actually need to do is push that site. And I need to push it in order to send all that AV Ops Center configuration to the hardware, since it's the hardware that is reporting its status to AV Ops Center. Click OK to push. Let's save a copy of that site. And now we are pushing. And the site has been successfully pushed and is online. And it, in fact, is now reporting state up to AV Ops Center. So let's switch back to AV Ops Center and go back to the organization overview. And I'm going to force a refresh of that page since there's a new device to be found. And there it is. You see Booth Company has one device. Now, with the top level selected, I get to see all of the devices in all of the child spaces because I have all related spaces on this tab selected. If I change to current space only, you'll see it goes blank. There's nothing directly in Booth Company. So where is this device? Well, I set it by default, all new devices get placed in the unsorted space. So I'm going to select that, and then you'll see if I go to current space only that I still get to see that prism. Usually I leave things almost always on all related spaces, and I just navigate to the space I want here in the tree. So let's say this prism is in use at Gino's Pizza. I'm going to click and drag it and drop it on to Gino's Pizza, move that device, and then it's no longer an unsorted, so it's disappeared. But if I click on Gino's Pizza, we'll see there it is. And it has a nice green indicator saying it is online. So let's click on it and look in more depth into the monitoring capabilities of a device in AV Ops Center. Now, the left side shows you some high-level information. It shows you the device, the name, its location, its high-level status, a little more details about the device. I can even click more and see when it was created and its MAC address. Usually you don't need these, so they're hidden. And then I have a set of commands that I can issue to the device. I'm going to skip those right now and come back to them in a bit. Now, the bulk of the information is in this tabbed layout, showing me a bunch of useful information about the device. It's online. There's no problems, no incidents, and no tickets. I have no pending command. A command is something that I initiate from AV Ops Center and send to the device, and it's pending when I've sent it, but it hasn't yet been completed by the device. Thermal status is okay. Power supply status is okay. It's not muted, and I haven't recalled a preset since I started monitoring AV Ops Center. I have an identify button here. Let me switch to this view where you can see the hardware that I'm monitoring, and the bottom left in this image is the Prism 0x0. If I click the identify button, it will send a command, and after a few seconds, you should see it start to flash there on the front panel view of the hardware. Now, additionally, we see the current device temperature. All is A-OK. It's in the green. And we actually see a plot of the temperature history. You might have noticed this just appeared while we were going. So I've only been monitoring it for a minute or two, so the temperature hasn't fluctuated. But this is a great tool to see over time, have we had any temperature thermal problems? Has it gone really hot? Has it gotten really cold because it turned off? It'll show you this plot over time. And now below that is where you can configure custom monitoring of data through the new data send module. And this allows you to monitor up to 10 custom pieces of data in AV Ops Center. And I'm going to demonstrate how that can be done and ways you can utilize that in a little bit later. The next tab is the configuration tab. This shows you a little more information about your device. So the Prism, the site name, site ID, firmware versions, if the device supported expansion cards, what cards are installed, information about the control network, information about the Dante network, and if any ARCs are connected. None, as you can see here. This is a place on the Warranties tab for you to upload a copy of your warranty, including setting the start and end date, making it really easy to monitor that 5-year warranty that Symetrix products come with. Incidents and tickets will display if there are any incidents or tickets, problems with the device. And I'm going to go through the incident ticket flow in a little bit. Dumps. This is where logs can be recovered from the device and something that support might ask you to do. Command shows if there's any active commands or pending commands, and all commands shows you everything that's been sent. So there you see that identify command that I sent a moment ago. Now the last two tabs, state and telemetries, are the raw data that are being sent back from the device. And here in telemetries, you can see it is sent every 3 seconds or so from the device. Normally, you don't need to look at that. Normally, you're going to spend 99% of your time in the overview and maybe a little bit of time in configuration, and only visit incidents and tickets if there's a problem. So let's go back into Composer and add some presets. I'm going to double click on my Prism, add in a 8-channel mixer, and store a preset into preset 1 for the default state. And let's lower all the faders and engage all the mutes for something very visibly obvious. And store that into preset 2. Now I'll go into the preset manager and rename these presets. This is the default preset 1 and all muted for preset 2. Save that and push it to the hardware. Okay. And now I'm going to switch back to the AV Ops Center. And let's recall that preset. Actually, let me go to a view where you can see both AV Ops Center and Composer. So I'm going to load preset number 1. And you see that the mixer returned back to the default state. And let's load preset number 2. And seconds later, it recalled preset 2. And AV Ops Center, if you notice here, reports that all inputs are muted preset was the last recalled preset. So this is a great way to support a customer if they report that, hey, I have no sound, and you log into AV Ops Center and see that the last recalled preset is one that mutes everything. Well, you probably have a good idea at why they have no sound going and can remotely solve it by recalling a preset remotely. Pretty cool. Now let's look at the rest of the commands here real quick. You can reboot your DSP. Don't need to do that right now. Identify it, I showed you that before. It's the same as this identify button. Device mute, I can click that and set its mute state to muted, and that will enable the global mute on the DSP. And after a few moments, we'll see that the mute state has converted to muted. Load preset, we just showed that. Sending custom commands, I'm going to talk about that in a moment. And then the rest of these have to do with sending logs from the DSP back to AV Ops Center for support purposes. Let me just do one here, such as get info. I'm going to click that, send it, and a command was sent. If we go and look in the dumps tab now, we'll actually see that log has been received after only a few minutes. And I can click on that. I can read that information in the log and send it to support. So a lot of really useful information that support might ask you to do. So that's a really cool way of getting information about your system that before required you to get on site and do some magic incantations to get. Now, let's say you are having a real problem. You've supported them remotely, and you still can't figure out what's going on. I'm going to send an unmute command. It's going to unmute their system, but the customer still tells me over the phone that they're having problems. Or let's say that a device has disappeared from the network and isn't showing here, or the customer says it powered off unexpectedly, some problem that you can't solve. Well, some problems will automatically change the status from online to missing or online to offline and generate what's called an incident. And you'll see an incident shown in this tab here. You can generate one manually if you think there's a problem, even if AV Ops Center doesn't automatically detect one, by clicking on Support, Report Incident. And maybe this incident still is no audio passing. Still no audio. And I'm going to call this a high priority incident. So now I've manually created that incident. And as I said, if a device is missing, it'll automatically create that incident here. Now, what an incident does is send an email to that default support contact at your company. So if a customer created that, or you created that to notify someone else at the company, or it was created automatically, they're going to get that email. It also shows up in your tree with a little exclamation mark here. It shows up on the Overview Incident tab with a click to get to the product. So really fast to get around and grabbing your site and your information if there's a problem. Now, some incidents get solved automatically. Oh, it's missing from the system because someone tripped over a power cable, and as soon as you plug it back in, it's going to solve that incident automatically. But for incidents that have been created manually, those have to be resolved manually. Or they have to be escalated to our support team if you need additional help. So let's show that. Let's say you've gone through all the things you can think of, you still need some help. You can now click on Actions and escalate this incident to a ticket. So audio isn't passing is my name of my ticket. And this description is a place for you to send in more information about the problem to Symetrix support. And it tells you that when you escalate an incident, that it's going to temporarily give support access to this device so that they can look into the problems themselves. I'm going to click Escalate, and now you see, in addition to an active incident, I have a ticket. I can click on that ticket, and I can see a variety of information about the ticket. I can even open a chat with support and send them some problems or more info. I tried calling preset and power cycling. And support can see this same view as well, and they can click on See Device, and now support has access to just this window. Normally, support can't see any of your devices. We can't get into your systems. We don't want to get into your systems. But with the incidents here escalated as a ticket, support can now go in and they can look around. They can pull their own log files and get them from the dumps tab. They can look at the configuration, and they can work through this problem with you either over the phone, through email, through chat, whatever's most convenient for you. Now, once the incident and the ticket have been resolved, once you are happy with it, you can mark a ticket as resolved. And that removes support's access to the device, and they can no longer access that device. The incident is still open in this case because it was a manually opened incident, so I'm going to close it and say worked with support. Problem solved. And now I have no more incidents to speak of. Cool. All right. Let's finish off by showing some advanced capabilities of the monitoring system. I'm going to switch back to Composer and close this site that I am monitoring. It's still monitoring again because the DSP is the thing sending the data. And I'm going to open a previously created site. Now this has the rest of those devices that I showed you earlier. So it has a Radius NX DSP, an Audio-Technica microphone, a T5 touchscreen, and a SoundTube Dante speaker. The T5 is running this same control screen. Let's put that up there just so we have it open. But I've yet to enable AV Ops Center for this site. So I'm going to go to AV Ops Center Manager. I have pasted in my organization API key. This is a per site field. So every site you're going to need to paste that API key in. And that's because you might be working on a site for one customer who has their own account, for example, and you need to use a different API key for that. And I need to go through the claiming process. None of these devices have been claimed, so I'm going to click Claim All Units. As I'm doing that, you may notice that the SoundTube and Audio-Technica microphone are indented. That's because they are called child devices of this Radius. And this works the same as Dante. Just like in Composer with Dante, you have to locate a DSP, and then that DSP locates the other Dante devices. That's the exact same way that AV Ops Center Manager works with third-party Dante devices, as well as Symetrix Dante devices that are just input-output devices. They do not communicate directly with AV Ops Center. The DSP that locates them is the thing that communicates. Everything is claimed. AV Ops Center is enabled. I'm going to click Done and push that site. There we go. And you can see everything is monitoring nicely. But let's say this here was muted. And the customer called you and said, I'm not hearing any audio, I need help. How are you going to solve their problem? Well, let's solve it again in AV Ops Center. I'm going to switch back to AV Ops Center here, do a quick refresh to grab those new devices and organize them. If I go to Unsorted, I'll see the 4 new devices, and let's pretend these are the devices in the Bellevue School Theater. Notice that when I moved the parent device, those child devices moved automatically. And so now I have no more devices here in the unsorted list, and if I go into the theater, I see all 4. So now that we have all the devices properly located in the theater, let me show you. If you select Booth Company at your top level and scroll down on the dashboard, you actually get this nice map that shows you the location of all of your devices. And here you can see that I have 4 here in Bellevue at the school and 1 here in Seattle for Gino's Pizza. I have another map here that shows me incidents. So I have no incidents right now, but if I were to start another incident, why don't I actually do that? Go to Gino's Pizza and report an incident. We'll just call this a test incident. So now it's showing an incident. And if I go look at my map, you can see that there's a problem there at Gino's Pizza having a incident. So really useful way of viewing everything in your system. But we know that's not a real problem, so I'm going to go here and close it. So let's take a quick look at a few other things with the radius that I've set up here. First, you can see that its device temperature is really hot. This is actually something we purposefully did just to show you what it would look like if there's a problem here with the temperature. So you can see it is purposefully much hotter than you would want it to be, and I have a nice red indication that that is the case. Now, additionally, I'm monitoring some key bits of information about this system that I've sent up via the custom data module. So I'm monitoring the speaker status. So I can check, this customer tells me there's no audio. Well, the speaker status is normal. The speaker temperature is normal. The speaker power status is normal. Those all come from that Dante loudspeaker. All right, that's good. The room mute. This is a special mute that I've enabled and am monitoring for that room. Well, that's on. So I'll bet that's the problem. This room is muted. The volume is all the way up at 12 dB. It's too loud. Again, this is just a custom message that I've configured. All right, so it looks like the room is muted, so let's send a command to unmute it. Let me show you a view with Composer so you can see the status of that mute. And I'm going to send a custom command. I'll show you how this is set up in a minute. Custom command 1 is set to the mute button, and I want to send it a value of 0 to unmute. Click send, and that send is set, and boom, you see immediately that mute button triggers, turns off, and the system is unmuted. And here, after a second or so later, it reflects it here in AV Op Center that it has been unmuted. So that really is a great way that you can solve problems remotely. Let me show you how I configured that in Composer. We have two new modules in Composer. One is data send and one is command receive. So data send allows me to send any value up to AV Op Center. So this is how I'm monitoring that amp status, the room mute, the room volume, the mic mute. And you can see it's a pretty complicated module. It would take a bit of explanation to go through it in detail. We don't have the time right now, but we can have a more advanced webinar later if you're interested to go through and show you this in detail. We also have this command receive module. And what this does is it sends any command back to Composer, and then those can be linked to control signals or to control numbers. If I view the remote control numbers, you'll see that remote command 1 is linked to output 1, remote control number 1, and output level 2 is linked to remote control number 2. So those let me easily control those two remote control numbers from AV Op Center. So again, that's a high level of how these new modules work, but they require a little bit more explanation to go into detail, and we can do that in a later date. All right. So that's all I have planned for the demonstrations today. I really hope you found those useful, and I gave you a tour of all of the really cool stuff with AV Op Center. Of course, these custom modules can really be expanded to do almost anything, allowing you to monitor virtually any control in Composer and then send and control remotely any command from AV Op Center. With that, we're going to switch to Q&A so that we can answer any questions that you have. I'm going to pass it back to Vin, and he is going to moderate this Q&A session. Vin?
Absolutely, Ben. And thanks so much. That was really exciting for me to watch, even as I've seen it before. So really great tour. The first question is from Bruce. Does Symetrix have a back door to the DSP without my direct instigation? I'm thinking of the consultant hit by a truck scenario where my client needs your support, but I'm unavailable. Can Symetrix get in and do anything for my client DSP?
No, we don't, and that is by design for security purposes. We do not see any of the devices or access to them without being granted that access. So it is by design, and yes, there are some horror scenarios where you could imagine where it might be useful, But we took the path of rather having giving you the privacy and you the trust in the system to know that no one can see the system unless they have been granted access. But of course, what you can do is grant other people access to the system in advance. So what you don't want is to have only a single person in AV Ops Center here in your users. You want to proactively add some more people at your company just in case something bad were to happen. So they might not have full training, but they have enough to know this is how I get in and this is how I escalate a problem with support.
Excellent, excellent. Next up, Chris asks, is there documentation from Symetrix or Excite about what data is passed to the servers from our Symetrix hardware so users can keep that security tight?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and in fact, I looked behind the scenes and I had our friends here dig up the actual, both the data they were transmitting, but more importantly for this question, I think the actual link for the Excite Trust Center, which we will post in the chat momentarily. And Ben, I
Yeah,
think, is about to
absolutely.
show us.
Yeah, I'm about to show you, but we'll post that in the chat. But Excite has a very public trust center that is available at the bottom of their page. And this shows everything about security, privacy, and compliance and certifications, giving you the information about how your data is held securely and privately. And this shows you everything. And they also have a public API that shows the API that we use that is completely public, and shows all the commands we do to register devices, get child devices, and the security level with it. So it can be very easily traced and audited by any service that you need to do that.
Excellent. Next up, while it's a great service and it's free for now, what should we expect the price to be when beta ends?
Yeah, good question. At this point, as Vin kind of said, the beta is here to allow everyone to try everything and get used to the capabilities and give us the feedback for how we want to improve it. We have a bunch of ideas ourselves of new features we want to add, and we want to do that with your feedback as well. In the future, the capabilities I just showed you are part of the basic capabilities. It's not going to be limited by device. It's not going to be limited by feature set. We are going to be adding an advanced tier to AV Ops Center with some additional capabilities, some of which we have planned, some of which we want to get your feedback on. And those new capabilities will be under the advanced tier. And that pricing will be comparable to some of the other offerings you see out there in our market space. So the bottom line is the capabilities that you see now will be free moving forward, and everything else will be an addition. The note there is that the data send module and the custom command module, those are part of the advanced tier when we go to the advanced pricing model. As I said, we haven't fully figured out the pricing or the timing, but it will be not anytime soon, which is why we are giving you the time to really get to used to it and give us that feedback. But once we do, it will be priced comparably to some of the other pricing in the field, and it will be priced by DSP. Every DSP will need the license for the advanced monitoring capabilities. All the other devices will not need it.
Great. Thanks, Ben. Next up, Danny asks, I have a site with a legacy radius 12 by 8 that doesn't show up in the claim screen, despite being able to be updated past 8.5. Do we plan to support these legacy devices in the future, or are they too old?
The legacy 12 by 8 is too old. The radius AAC can be supported. So this has to do with the amount of available processing on the device. So it goes back to Radius AAC is the oldest device that can be supported with AV Ops Center. Anything earlier than that cannot be. So 12 by 8 and 12 by 8 EX, for example, cannot be supported in AV Ops Center.
Great. And the the final question we have in here right now is, what is the best way to set up AV Ops Center to manage multiple clients? Should I create an account for each one of them, or is the Spaces tree really the best approach?
Yeah, the short answer is I would recommend starting with the Spaces tree and then going to separate clients if you need to. And it all kind of ends up on volume and how you're supporting them. If the client wants to be the primary owner of the monitoring and basically give you access to their monitoring site, you're going to want to create a new organization for that client. Alternately, if you are the primary owner of the monitoring and you want to invite the client to your site, but they don't want to own it or do any setup, then the Spaces tree, adding them at the top level, is the best way to do that. And as you can see, the Spaces tree, while right now is easy for me to see with just this full list. You can hide various things, so you just see customers, and you can search it as well. So if I type Gino, I only see the areas within Gino. So it does scale really well to lots and lots of clients. Generally, you'll want to stick with the Spaces tree unless there's a client who wants to be the primary owner of the organization, in which case you would do that, and they would invite you into their organization.
Great. Thanks, Ben. So with that, that is all the questions we have today. But if you have any questions in the future, please don't hesitate to contact us through support@symetrix.co. We would look forward to helping you on board. With that being said, I also want to thank you all for your time today. If you haven't already and you're ready to jump into AV Ops Center, you can click the blue button here and head straight on over to that account setup page. With that, I'll also thank Ben for such a great tour and appreciate his help, and wish everybody a great day or evening.